Well, Gout Gout has stunned the athletic world, once more clocking the equal fastest 100-metre run by an Australian on home soil.
Thousands packed into a stadium in Melbourne to watch one of the most exciting teenagers in athletics. At 17, Gout Gout had become the name everyone wanted to see, but that night he lost by just 0.05 of a second. 2 weeks later, he returned and ran 19.67, faster than Bolt ever had as a teenager. Gout Gout was born on December 29, 2007, in Ipswich, Queensland. His parents, Bona and Monica, escaped South Sudan during the Civil War. They fled first to Egypt before eventually reaching Australia in 2005, 2 years before Gout was born. He grew up as one of 7 children, around 40 kilometers from Brisbane, in a family with no connection to sprinting. Gout was a soccer kid. Track was never part of the plan. Then, in 2020, during his first year at Ipswich Grammar School, everything changed at a school sports carnival. Gout had never trained seriously. He had never even worn spikes. He simply started running, and suddenly, coaches around the field were paying attention. Coach Diane Shepherd found him that day. She pulled Gout aside and told him something nobody had ever told him before. She said he had the ability to become great. That conversation changed the direction of his life. By 14 years old, Gout was already running 10.57 seconds over 100 meters and 21.14 over 200 meters. Both performances were Australian under-16 records. He was no longer simply a fast schoolboy. He was producing times Australian sprinting had almost never seen from someone his age. Then, at 16, Gout ran 20.04 seconds in the 200 meters. The performance broke a record set by Peter Norman at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, a mark that had survived for 56 years. Usain Bolt saw the footage, posted it on Instagram, and wrote 4 words: "Gout looks like young me." Adidas signed Gout to a professional contract before he had even finished high school. At 16 years old, one of the biggest names in athletics was comparing him to himself. A global brand had signed him, and the entire sprinting world was beginning to watch. Then came the night that stopped everything. March 2025, Melbourne's Lakeside Stadium. 10,000 tickets had been sold. It was the first sellout for a one-day Australian athletics meeting since 2001, while more than 1.2 million people watched on television. This was the Mari Plant meet, and Gout Gout was the reason so many people were watching. He entered the stadium wearing a red Adidas tracksuit, and the crowd erupted. But underneath all that attention was one important detail. This was Gout's first senior 200-meter race. He was only 17. Lachlan Kennedy had other plans. Kennedy was 4 years older than Gout and, just like him, had grown up in Queensland. 9 days before the Melbourne race, Kennedy had won silver in the 60 meters at the World Indoor Championships in Nanjing, but his 200-meter personal best was only 21.19 seconds. With almost all the attention surrounding Gout, very few people expected Kennedy to be the man who ruined the night. Kennedy exploded from the blocks. He attacked the bend, opened a huge advantage, and kept driving while Gout began closing from behind. Kennedy reached the line in 20.26 seconds, destroying his previous personal best by almost an entire second and producing the 5th fastest 200 meters in Australian history. Gout crossed in 20.3. The difference was 0.04 of a second, 0.04. Barely the width of a shoe. Afterward, Kennedy admitted how close it had been. "I knew he was coming. My goal was just to hold him off. 5 more meters and he would have had me." Gout walked across and hugged him. There were no excuses. He told reporters, "That is what you live for. This environment, the hype, the people, the pressure, this is sport." But underneath that calm response, something had changed. What Gout did next is the part that makes his development so unusual. He did not suddenly start lifting huge weights. He did not rebuild his entire training program. He returned to Diane Shepherd and simply became sharper. Gout stands 1.83 meters tall but weighs only 66 kilograms, making him lighter than almost every elite sprinter around him. He does almost no serious heavy gym work. His speed comes from technique rather than muscle. His stride reaches 2.62 meters per step, longer than Bolt's stride length at his peak, while his ground contact time, the amount of time his foot remains on the track with each step, is unusually short. Biomechanists Sturdy in his races say his neuromuscular coordination resembles a 25-year-old professional rather than a teenager still in high school. His Achilles tendon stores and releases energy like a spring, and analysts say its efficiency may be unlike anything they have measured from an athlete his age. Shepherd's program ignores many of the standard rules. There is no heavy lifting. Instead, Gout works on core stabilization, sprint drills, block starts, reaction time, mobility, and carefully structured recovery. She is protecting his body while allowing the speed to develop naturally. Then, in February 2026, Gout arrived at a quiet Brisbane club meet called the Denbird Smith Shield and ran exactly 10 seconds for 100 meters. There were no huge cameras or packed stadium. Just a Saturday morning race that tied the fastest legal 100 meters ever run by an Australian man on home soil. And Gout still had weeks before his biggest race. Kennedy was improving too. He opened 2026 by winning the Hobart Track Classic in 20.43 seconds. His 100-meter personal best stood at 9.98, making him one of only a handful of Australians to legally break 10 seconds. He owned the Australian 60-meter record at 6.43 and had represented Australia in the 4x100-meter relay at the 2024 Paris Olympics. Before the rematch, Kennedy said, "I am confident I will be able to defend my title." There was no reason for him not to believe it. He had already beaten Gout. He was older, stronger, more experienced, and proven against senior competition. What Kennedy could not know was how much Gout had changed. April 12, 2026, Sydney Olympic Park Athletics Centre, the Australian Athletics Championships. This was not a junior race. Gout was racing grown men for the senior national title. Before stepping onto the track, he had written one number in his notes, 19.75 seconds. For an entire week, he kept repeating that number to himself. Then the gun fired. Gout drove aggressively from the blocks, remained low through his acceleration, and opened his stride as he entered the straight. Aidan Murphy, one of Australia's best young sprinters, pushed him hard around the bend. Murphy produced an extraordinary 19.88-second performance, breaking 20 seconds himself. It was nowhere near enough. Gout crossed the line and looked toward the clock, 19.67 seconds. The stadium erupted. The commentator could barely contain what had just happened. "The world will be shaking, it is seismic." Gout had broken the world under-20 record of 19.69 seconds set by American Ariane Knighton in 2022. More incredibly, he had destroyed Usain Bolt's best teenage performance. Bolt ran 19.93 seconds in 2004 and never went faster while still a teenager. Gout had just run 19.67, 26 hundredths quicker. The performance was so fast that it would have been enough to win bronze at the Paris 2024 Olympics. After the race, Gout revealed the number he had been carrying around all week. "I wrote down 19.75, and for the past week I have been telling myself I am running 19.75, and obviously 19.67. You have got to love it." Noah Lyles, 8-time world champion and Olympic 100-meter gold medalist, had already publicly said Gout was more talented at the same age than Lyles himself had been. Not more talented someday, more talented at the same age right now. And Usain Bolt, watching from Geneva, Switzerland, understood exactly what came with that kind of attention. Bolt told CNN, "At that young age, I was there myself." You start getting pulled in every direction and forget about track and field. Hopefully he has the right people around him, because if you lose track of the sport, everything else goes with it. But even 19.67 did not silence everyone. Critics questioned the conditions surrounding Gout's Sydney performance. 6 days later, he returned at the Brisbane Junior Championships, this time running in front of his home crowd, and won the 100-meter final. Gout had heard everything being said about him. His answer was simple: there are always going to be critics. If you have critics, it means you are doing something right. Kennedy won that night in Melbourne. He took the race, the podium, and the moment everybody expected would belong to Gout. But Gout came back and won something much bigger. He ran 19.67 seconds, broke a world record, surpassed Bolt's fastest teenage performance, and sent a message to every rival, every critic, and every sprinter on the planet.